I'm very happy. First, I should thank Dr. Samir for introducing me to a topic which I'm speaking on for the last uh, several months right now, because this topic was suggested by Dr. Samir only to me. And today I'm really very happy because tomorrow we are going to celebrate the International World Happiness Day. And today I am talking to you about something about happiness and sustainable happiness and happiness research. But we can't go in 40 minutes. So this is a very vast area. And in 40 minutes, I don't know how far I can do justice to this topic. Sorry. But for me, this is a very interesting topic because this topic itself has motivated me and it has helped me when I was going through the literature. It has helped me a lot to keep going in my life and also to be happy whenever there is a dissatisfied moment. I can think of the many ways in which I can just uh, cultivate happiness in my life, and that has helped me a lot. So, I'll just move on to the topic. So, as you can see, happiness it's a journey, and that is why I have put in that first slide. Welcome to happiness. You have to enjoy every moment of life. And when we talk about happiness, there are lots of definitions. Not everybody sees happiness as the same. And everybody has a view on happiness. And my attempt is to ask some key questions in happiness research, and to suggest you some answers. And I want you people to think and you people to find out how you become happy. And if suppose you are being part and parcel of a happiness research, how will you respond to certain questions coming to you? And happiness is something like being in a happy mood. So every minute of our life, we come across a lot of things. And some people say it is very difficult to remain happy, but we can enjoy every moment. And those people who are able to enjoy the living moment, the mindfulness in that, they are happy people. And studies tell us that they live longer. But how far this is true, some studies only have been conducted in happiness research, and almost all these studies tell us that the longevity is associated with the happiness of an individual. So, before going into the details of happiness, let me quote from Aristotle. He says, happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. So when we look at from an Aristotelian point of view, we it seems that it is very true, really true, that we can think of happiness as the meaning and purpose of life. So everybody who lives in this world, they are in search of happiness, and they don't know from where they will get, whether they look outside for happiness or whether they look inside within themselves to see happiness. That is also a question. We don't know where they look for happiness, but some people are keen on searching for happiness, when some people are very keen on looking within themselves to see happiness. And in this presentation, I'll be just talking about some little bit part from the Aristotelian view, and I'll talk to you about happier people, happiness, sustainable happiness, and I'll tell you one or two stories, maybe one more story. And I need to encourage the good so that you can bring in a lot of happiness in your world, and you can also talk about happiness research. And with that, I'll conclude. But before that, let me tell you what is sustainable happiness, how these two terms are clubbed together. We talk about sustainability in a lot of dimensions. But recently we have clubbed happiness also with sustainability. And sustainable happiness is that happiness which contributes to individual, community, or their well-being without exploiting other people's environment or future generations. So Catherine O'Brien is a lady who has done a lot in this field. That is not in happiness research, but sustainable happiness. She has done a lot of work and she has published a lot in this area. And we can think of a lot of things from her studies as well. So when I want to talk to you about sustainable happiness, one of the aims of merging happiness and sustainability is to foster the well-being for all. Our well-being is fostered in merging that happiness with sustainability. That is, we have to keep on being in that state of happiness. So what are the things we can do in order to be in that state? But it is difficult, but we can if we do something intentionally, and we'll come to that in the later slides. So a further aim is to provide a counterpoint to the popular views of happiness that are entangled with consumer culture that can cause individuals to confuse the path to the good life as the goods life. So when we see some people who are in the pursuit of happiness, what we see is that they just want to buy a lot of things, and they think that when they amass some wealth and when they are able to get a lot of things in their life, they are happy. But it is only for that moment. When we buy a new thing, we keep that happiness to that moment alone. After some time, we are dissatisfied. We just don't know whether we are happy or not. And that is why we say some people are after goods life, amassing goods. That is their aim. And they are not leading through the path to the good life. The path to the good life leads to ultimate happiness. And who are these happier people? So, happiness is intended as the search for well being of a human being. And we say it is the good life we lead. And we also say, when we define happiness, we say happiness intended as a search for the good life, probably the most enduring pursuit throughout our life, leading to happiness. And also, when we look at the history, we can see a lot of people have given a lot of definitions regarding happiness. Even Aristotle, the thinker, has given a definition. That is why I quoted that definition. And there are a lot of other people, and some people look into the mythologies of India, the Vedas and the Puranas also, to see what is the ultimate happiness. And how do we measure happiness is the next question. I don't know whether we can measure happiness, but if we look at a person's face, we can know how happy that person is. Sometimes that will be just a mask. The real thing won't come out. But if we look at the little children, we can know very well that they are happy at certain moments and they are unhappy at certain moments. And when we look at an adult's face, we cannot determine whether they are happy or not, because they know very well how to hide their emotions. But not all are like that. So what determines how happy we are? There are lots of factors which determines our happiness. And when we define happiness, it can be thought of as an emotional state that reflects a high level of mental and or emotional well-being of all of us. And also we can say scientific perspectives typically frame happiness as a complex binary construct that encompasses subjective elements of both our affective domain and cognitive domain that contribute to the well-being. So there is the possibility of a happiness research. We can ask certain questions to certain individuals who are just defining what happiness is according to their beliefs and knowledge and according to the experiences they have come across in life, and they can define the happiness surveys, and from that we can arrive at conclusions which elements are more in them, the sit from the affective domain or sit from the cognitive domain, that contribute to the well-being of the people, or that makes the people more happier. So subjective well-being, and in the happiness literature, we call this as SWV, and it represents people's beliefs and feelings about whether they are leading a rewarding and desirable life. So there is uh, Limborski and Dickoff, who has done a great deal of the research pertaining to happiness, and especially pertaining to sustainable happiness. So Catherine O'Brien started the sustainable happiness research, and later it was taken up by her own disciples, and they have taken this to a very higher level. And the view of happiness can be traced back to the discourse of philosophers, as I told, from Aristotle, and the religious scholars have engaged in throughout the ages, as they have come long way, pondering the nature, the causes, and also the methods of for fostering human happiness. So for me, when I talk about happiness, it is something like whenever I talk about happiness nowadays, I tell two stories to them, and it is kind of finding beauty and happiness in the little things. For me, if you ask me what is happiness, I will say I find happiness in all the small things which I do, which I see, and which even in the grass on the ground, or in the hill, or on a tree, or on a little bird, or the flower that blooms, I can see happiness. For different people, happiness is something different. And the first story I want to tell you is something regarding a group of people who were just as a part of a seminar, were asked to get into a room, and there were a lot of balloons over there. And each one had to take 100 participants, somewhere around 100 participants were there, and they were asked to take a balloon, and they were asked to write their names on it and to put it back in the room. And the one who was just running the seminar, or the leader of the seminar, he asked them, go and find your balloon in which your name is written. And there was a lot of chaos and confusion in that room. Everybody started searching for their own balloons, and they couldn't find their balloon. And after 5 minutes, the leader or the team leader or the one who is convening the seminar asked them, please stop, try to get a balloon and read the name on that balloon, and find that person and give it with a smile on your face. And what happened, in no time, everybody could find the real owner of the balloon and hand over that balloon to that person with a smiling face. And what happened was, there was full of smiles over there, and a radiant happiness came into that room. So all the chaos and confusion ended over there. So from this story, what I would like to say is, I can define happiness as the ability to live one's life on his or her own terms. But sometimes we define our happiness based on what others do. So it is not like that. We have to define our own happiness. And I want to tell another story to you, the story of Aristippus. That story is something like a Greek philosopher, Aristippus, who has gained a comfortable position in the kingdom through the constant flattery of the king of the kingdom, the Greek king. And Aristippus once saw another philosopher in the king's courtyard. His name was Diogenes, but he was a very common man who had common thoughts and who never showed his knowledge, or who never bombasted on what he is having and all. So he was a very simple man, and he was eating a meager meal of peas over there. And Aristippus was telling, or maybe insulting that man by telling that, why are you eating this peas? If you can flatter the king very well, you will get a lot of money, you will become rich, and you can have a very good meal every day. You needn't live on the lentils or the peas you are eating right now. Instead, you can live on rich food. Then Diogenes replied, learn to live on lentils or peas, and that will give you a happy life. Instead of wanting more, you just be satisfied with what you are having. This is the reply. And sometimes when we define happiness, this is what I wish to tell you. Be happy, be contented with what you're having, and be thankful and grateful to whatever you are having, and you will be happy. And when we talk about happiness and happiness research, we can't go without telling or quoting from Abraham Maslow. And he has taught us a lot about the gratification at each levels, the Maslowian concept we have all learned in psychology. So it is something like the only happy people I know are the ones who are working well at something they consider important. So Abraham Maslow, in his self-actualization theory, tells us that at each level of our age, we have to get gratified. We have to have whatever is needed over there, and that satisfaction at each level of our life make us happy at the higher level. And at the last level, we can have the self-actualization. So happy people build their inner world, and unhappy people blame their outer world. So happy people always look into themselves. So there are two schools in happiness research. I'll come to that later. And when we look at those schools, we can say which school tells you to look within yourself, or which school tells you to look outside for happiness. But it is better to look inside to know more about happiness. And also, when we talk about some of the factors that influence our happiness, we can't go without telling about the genes. Three factors are there. What is the genes? We may say it is a set point. Already every human being has a set point, and that comes from the genes, and 50% of our emotion happiness comes from those genes, and 40% of our happiness comes from the intentional activities we plan to have when we want to talk about happiness. And 10% is from the environment in which we live. The 10% we can create, or if it is a positive environment, we can be happy always. But there are people who are not able to be happy when they live on more, when they think of amassing more things in life. That is why a lot of practices are being in consideration in different parts of the world. And some of the a movement which is which arose right now in different parts of the world is something like minimalism. Have the minimal things you want, and you will be a happy person. But man is always very avaricious. When somebody is having something, he or she also wishes to have that, and they run after that. That is, we still work in our affective domain. We are not in our cognitive domain. We are not able to understand what is essential for happiness. If we are satisfied with what we are having, if we are not avaricious, we can make our environment, the 10% can be increased, and the 50% genes activities can be reduced. So we need to have certain attitudinal changes when we want to pursue happiness in our life. And the intentional activities, I wish to talk about a lot of intentional activities which are over there. When we talk about intention activities, are those activities that are very positive and that makes you or makes your brain very productive. When we are happy, we'll be very productive. When we are unhappy, we are not much productive. So your brain is 31% more productive when you're very happy. If you are negative, it is less. If you are neutral, it is not very active. If you are stressed also, it is not very productive. So in order to increase your productivity, what you have to do is you have to activate your happiness, and then you can make your brain more productive. And there are a lot of things which we can say when we want to talk about happiness or intentional activities. When we say intentional activities to make us happy, it has to be a life of pleasure, engagement, and meaning. A life of pleasure, engagement, and meaning gives a lot of dimensions. Pleasure, in one way or the other, is determined by each person who has certain norms set in their life, and it is different to different people, and the activities in which they are they are being a parcel and part is also different. So there are a lot of components which tell us what exactly So when we talk about a life of pleasure, engagement, and meaning, it is something like a life of courage and a life of humanity, a life of transcendence, a life of temperance, life of justice, and a life of wisdom and knowledge. When we talk about a life of courage, we have to think in terms of our bravery, our resistance, our integrity, and our vitality. And when we talk about a life of humanity, we have to think of the leadership qualities we are having, and also the kindness we express to others, and also the love we are having for our fellow beings. And transcendence is something like appreciation of beauty, the humor in us, the gratitude we show, the spirituality within each individual, and of course, hope, which is the most important thing in that transcendence. And we also have to have temperance. Temperance is something like when we are able to forgive and when we are able to show mercy to other people, we have temperance. And when we have humility and modesty, then we have temperance. Also, when we are dealing with things, we have to show our prudence, then we have temperance. And we have to self regulate our habits, self regulate our behavior, self regulate our learning, and lot of other behaviors in us. We have to self regulate. When we are able to practice that self regulation, we may say we have temperance. And also, we have to say that justice, a life full of justice, that is a citizen. When we have the citizenship, our life, we have to look at our life. How just are we in doing certain things? Are we fair in our dealings? Are we having leadership qualities? Again, spirituality comes in here also. So when we do show justice to others, our spirituality also influence that justice. And of course, for everything, for a life of pleasure, engagement, and meaning, we need to have wisdom and enough knowledge. We need to have a perspective in our life. We need to be very curious in leading our life. And also, we have to learn a lot of new things. So, there should be a love of learning. And also, we should have open mindedness. And we have to be very creative. Our wisdom and knowledge help us to be very creative, and that leads to our ultimate happiness. So there are a lot of sustainable happiness practices we can stick on. When we talk about happiness and sustaining that happiness, it is something like gratitude. Of course, when we are dealing with happiness, we need to talk about uh, happiness as uh, happiness comes when we are thankful to whatever we get in life. So we have to ask ourselves what determines our happiness when we are showing our thankfulness to people, when we are just thanking a person who has done us something, we can say we are happy. So gratitude is one best practice for sustaining our happiness. And also, when we say move it as another term, that is why I told you earlier, we have to talk in terms of how the happiness is going, in what direction. I told you some people always say for happiness, we have to do a lot of other activities, external activities. These external activities tell us something regarding happiness, and we call this as hedonic principle in happiness. Hedonic means going along in a direction. Happiness as the opposite of suffering and misery. And to find happiness, that is our destination. They say happiness is our destination. So we have to move along with that. To a certain extent, that is true. And we will know what exactly is it when we come to the opposite of this hedonic movement. It is eudaimonic, and I'll talk about eudaimonic later. So there is a relationship role, which is another happiness practice which we have to have. A role is something like how we keep relations with other people in the society, to our parents, to our teachers, to our peer group, how we keep good relationship with them. So that relationship rule also uh, give us a lot of areas in which we have to find happiness. And be here now, or mindfulness is the next factor or next practice. That is, be live in the present moment. So make every moment a happy moment. And from this mindfulness, we have grown to the level of mindfulness meditation, being in the present moment and concentrating ourselves to improve our memory and our happiness. And one of the most important practice is forgiveness, which we often forget. We forget to forgive. We have to forgive a lot of people in order to be happy. So when you check your conscience, if you find anybody there to whom you have to ask forgiveness, do it immediately, and that will give you a lot of happiness. And another practice is to feel good here, to do good. So whenever you do good to yourself and to others, you feel good. I've done something good. That gives that attitude, that moment itself, you become very happy. So that you can smile and spread happiness everywhere. So wherever you go, make people happy, have a beaming face, have a cheerful face, and people will look at you and say, oh, that girl is so happy, that man is so happy, that lady is so happy, and you can spread happiness all over there. And I have to give you some factors of happiness also. So when you deal with happiness research, we have to look for certain factors of happiness. And this is not my thing. I have taken it from a Duke University study on happiness. They have done a lot of studies, and this is done by a researcher, Tanya. She has drawn certain pictures telling us about 8 factors of happiness. In this slide, I have put 4. And the first thing she has mentioned is lack of suspicion and resentment. That is, whenever we have a grudge, we nurse that grudge. And that grudging, nursing that grudge becomes a major factor in unhappiness. So unlock that unhappiness to happiness by just avoiding that grudge. Never nurse a grudge. So have a life of hope. So lack of suspicion and resentment will give you happiness. That is the first factor. And the second factor is not living in the past. We can't always live in the past. Some people are always preoccupied with the past mistakes and failures that lead to depression. Just forget it. That day itself, you try to forget it. It's very difficult, but you can practice that. So don't live in the past, live in the present moment and look forward to the next moment, and just be happy. And don't waste your time and energy fighting things you can't change. Some people always argue on certain things they can't change. They don't cooperate with life. So when we can cooperate with life by making a circle of influence among the people with whom we are living or we are working, don't waste your time and energy fighting the things you can't change. Better change yourself, as the great man has said. Stay involved with the living world. That is another thing. So be in the world. Resist withdrawal and become reclusive during stress. Sometimes when we are so stressed out, we want to go into a nutshell and feel safe over there and remain like that. That is not a solution for our stress. Just come out of that stress. There are a lot of intentional activities you can do to come out of that. So stay involved with the living world. And the next is refuse to indulge in self-pity. There are a lot of people, they say, my life is mine. And if I commit a mistake, they indulge in self-pity. Oh, it was my mistake. Don't do that. Start loving yourself. First you love yourself, then only you can love someone else. So no one gets through life without some sorrow and misfortune. It is always there. It is a part and parcel of our life. But we have to get through that and start loving yourself and start loving others. So the 6th point is cultivate old-fashioned virtues. I don't know whether they are old-fashioned still. For some, it is old-fashioned because the definition of love has changed. The definition of compassion has changed. The definition of humor has changed, and loyalty, that has also changed. So love it in the old way. Love, compassion, humor, and loyalty. Practice that. and don't expect too much from yourself. Sometimes we do, when we do some work, we expect a lot of things beyond our ability. So there is always a gap between expectation and ability, and that results in feeling of inadequacy. When we think that I have to do more, I have to do more, I don't know whether I'm capable of doing that, there that results in a gap between that expectation and ability. Of course, you should expect, but you try one step at a time and you can reach the culmination point. And if you are not doing that, it is a feeling of inadequacy. And find something bigger than yourself to believe in. So that is like when we go for meditation and all. That is why the a lot of egotistical people score lowest in any test measuring happiness. Self-centered people, they have their ego conquering everything in them, so they don't know what to do next because their ego rules them. So shed that ego and be in the society, be with a lot of people, and you have to look into yourself and start loving yourself. So find something bigger. So when you do meditation and all, you are able to just find more happiness. So now we are moving to the fag end of the top paper. It is something like happiness research. So when we talk about happiness research, it is a label for a wide range of research programs that aim to uncover the correlates or causal determinants of happiness. So what are the correlates of happiness? What are the causal determinants of happiness? That is why we have to look into our affective domain and cognitive domain, whether it is life satisfaction. How do we get life satisfaction? If we acquire something, are we happy? Are we satisfied? No, we go for, we say we need more. We need more. We are so avaricious, and we don't know whether we are looking after our subjective well-being. SWB, as I said earlier. So happiness is looking after our subjective well-being. So if we are happy and satisfied, our subjective well-being or our SWB is very high. So we have to think in terms of that. Here I want to explain the eudaimonic side. Those people who are living life in a full and satisfactory way, they are eudaimonics. That is, for happiness, they don't turn elsewhere. What they do is they look into themselves, they look inside, and they see happiness over there. And sometimes when we look into ourselves, when we see our inner self, we know that happiness is not derived externally. Happiness is derived from within our thoughts, within our feelings, with from what we have learned and what we have experienced, and even in the smallest little things that come across us, we can find happiness. And it is better to be a eudaimonic than a hedonic when we talk about happiness. So we should say happiness is a satisfactory journey. We have to satisfy ourselves and we have to move along when we talk about happiness or happiness research. So happiness, we may say, is an umbrella term for several theories of well-being. So there are several theories. We have to look up those theories before we start doing some research on happiness. So happiness research is a recent trend, and many people, especially psychologists, just look at people and they interview or they observe and they try to find why people are happy, how people are happy, what is happening when they are happy. All this are related with happiness research. And these theories cover intrinsically rewarding and valued experience. First is positive beliefs about self and the world. We can measure that through questionnaires or some incidents or positive psychological functioning. We can check that also. And second is happiness has been considered a basic emotion by most theorists within the psychology of emotions, especially in positive psychology. We talk about a lot about the happiness theory. And in positive psychology, when we talk in terms of the subjective well-being of the people, it is something not like the normal psychology. Normal psychology always looked at the behavior of the people, and they wanted to know why they are not happy, why they are mentally ill, something like that, in negative way. But in positive psychology, the direction is in a positive manner, and they look at the happiness factor more than anything. So if people are happy, they have found out that the positive psychologists have found out that people are more productive and they achieve more. But when we look at literature leading to achievement and happiness, there is a scarcity for that also. So when we look at some of the researchers done by Julia Annas, she is a historian of ancient philosophy and author of the morality of happiness. She has published a book, a very good book called The Morality of Happiness. And she has analyzed the Greek conceptions of happiness and discovered one day that she had been added to a bibliography of happiness researchers on the world database of happiness. But when she looked around there, she couldn't find much things related to happiness as achievement. So I will say happiness is an achievement also. Happy people are have achieved something in their life. That is why they are very happy. So you have to look at happiness as an achievement also. So Julian has also said something related to the great philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, and also she read a lot about the Stoics. And she said, however, discouraged in the end, Annas or the Stoic, he was not surprised that if you rush to look for empirical measures of an unanalyzed subjective phenomenon resulting in happiness, you won't find it there. What is that the social scientists of the world database of happiness are actually measuring? So we are not sure about that. Here is the heart of the problem. That is what he is telling. Is happiness really something subjective? Is it simply a matter of pleasure? Is it a positive feeling? One can at least hope it is positive feeling. But scientists or philosophers, they say it is not a positive feeling. It has to come from within and within our mind. So you have to be a eudaimonic in order to find out your happiness. And I want to conclude. And before that, I would like to tell you just one more story before I end. It is actually not a story. It is actually about a film in which there was a pursuit of happiness. And in that film, a person started a journey in pursuit of happiness. And the name of the film is A Journey in Order to Find Happiness. So there was also a book based on the story. And actually, a book came in the year 2014, which was converted into a movie by the same name. And you can see that movie, it is available online. And you can see that movie. This movie, the hero of the movie is like a psychologist. His name is Hector. Actually, he's a psychiatrist who was in pursuit of happiness and who always wanted the patients who came to him to be very happy. But he found that most of them were not happy, uh, and they were very unhappy with the mundane life they were leading in this world. While meeting with his patients, he realized that most of his patients are not really ill. Mental patients came to him. So since he was a psychiatrist, and he found out that they were not really ill, but they were really very unhappy. So he wanted to find out the reason for that unhappiness. So he decided to go for a solo trip with a small book he had with him. He had a fancy fiancée, and that fiancée had just gifted him with a small notebook. And he just started a solo journey, and he came across a lot of situations wherein he found people and wherein he found a lot of people, and he was just talking to a lot of things and asking questions. and little things which came across him. He was looking at that and finding certain situations into which he came, certain people to whom he came across. He was looking for happiness everywhere. So he was looking everywhere for happy moments, and he wanted to analyze what is happiness through his journey. And some of the things he came across was like this: making comparisons can spoil your happiness. That was one of the first thing he came across. And he said happiness often comes when least expected. We don't know when we will become happy, when we will come across a happy moment. And many people only see happiness in their future. They say, oh, I don't know when I will be happy. Certain questions like that. It is something yet to come. These are the thoughts of some people. So he was recording all these things. And the second point he made is, it is a mistake to think that happiness is the goal. And he also said happiness is being with the people that you love. And happiness is being separated from the people that you love. That is also something in which we believe. And the third point he emphasized was happiness is answering your calling. What do you have to do? Where you have to work. There is a call that has to come from within. So listen for that call, hear that call, and go after that call. Then you will be happy. And the next point he made is happiness is feeling useful to others. So just think whether you are useful to anybody. If you are useful to someone, you can be happy. And avoiding unhappiness is not the road to happiness. So this is another point he noted. Avoiding unhappiness is not the road to happiness. There will be a lot of things which is coming across as which is not happy, but we can't avoid that and go. We have to take care of that also. So happiness is caring. When such moments come, we have to think in terms of caring about the happiness of those you love. You can't escape from that. And listening is loving. So I know there are a lot of people who never listen to anyone else. But when they speak, we have to listen. So that is also something which curtails the happy feeling. And also happiness is not attaching too much importance to what other people think. So don't think when you do something, some people will say something, and some are very much worried when they want to do something. Oh, what will others think if I do this, or if I say this, what will happen? What will others think? What will others say? What will others feel? Just ignore that. So we have to think that happiness is a certain way of seeing things. So if there is a rivalry in between that ruins our happiness, we have to check that out also. But as the eudaimonic say, it is not a destination. No, hedonic people say it is a destination. It is not a destination. It has to come from within. It is the state of being in the present moment. And happiness means making sure that those around you are happy. So we have to make everybody who are around us happy. So then we can be happy. So as conclusion, I wish to say the union of sustainability, happiness, and well-being is inevitable. And sustainable happiness has the potential to create game-changing shifts in attitudes and policies, practices, and behaviors. And through explorations of sustainable happiness, individuals are choosing to be accountable for how they pursue happiness. And also they understand that their well-being is interconnected with other people's, both now and into the future, and that they have a relationship with the other than human inhabitants of this planet. Overall, it seems clear that we cannot flourish in isolation, and that our flourishing cannot continue to be at the expense of other people or the natural environment. When we talk about happy and happiness, it do not have the exact counterparts in every language, and they express sets of cultural expectations and ideals that are not universal. So let us just say happiness seems to be multidimensional and plural in constitution, having complex biological underpinnings. And there is a lot of scope in doing happiness research. And let us move forward. All the educationists, they can look for some kind of happiness research. Of course, this is resulting in the well-being of the students, the teachers, or the people around us. So happiness research should be a new area into which we have to move on. And that will result in a lot of good things that can change the whole world. With these words, I'm winding up. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be here. And thank you for uh, the patient listening you all did. And I also given the resources over here. And you can read a lot about happiness, but you won't find much articles in happiness research. So thank you once again.